From almost winning the Champions League a few years ago, back to not even qualifying for European football at all, and losing 5 straight finals. Tottenham is one of the most confusing clubs in Europe, and with a history like that, it begs the question, are Spurs really cursed? Now, unlike what most people think, Spurs were actually pretty decent back in the day. Formed in 1882, they won an FA Cup in 1901 and became the first and only non-league side to achieve this feat. Follow that with another FA Cup win in 1921, a couple of relegations in and out of the first division, and their status in the game was truly confusing. But in 1950, when things seemed a lot calmer, Spurs went on to win promotion back to the Premier Division and win the league the following year. The 1950s to 1970s then proceeded to bring back about Spurs' golden era, because with the arrival of legendary Bill Nicholson, Spurs went on to win the First Division and FA Cup in the same season, and with the signing of Jimmy Greaves, the greatest striker from a numbers perspective in the history of English football, they landed an impressive haul of trophies, which included the UEFA Cup, back-to-back FA Cups in 1981 and 1982, and the UEFA Winners' Cup in 1984. But 2 years prior, a takeover at the club was happening, and this signalled the end of the golden era because, with the businessman Alan Sugar the new owner of the club, he sacked club legend Terry Venables and treated Spurs like a commercial business and nothing more. Between 1984 and 2008, Spurs were on a roller coaster when it came to managers. They appointed 18 different managers within that period, but none managed to find a major platform to build on in terms of success until Harry Redknapp arrived and changed the fortunes of the club. See, 2008 was a historic year for Spurs, because up till this point, they'd been playing their home games at the White Hart Lane Stadium. But by this year, the owners decided to commence plans on building a new improved stadium to match local town rivals Arsenal. Back on the pitch, Spurs went on to win the League Cup this year, their first title in 9 years. And even though they finished in the second half of the table, the promising signs were evident for all to see. By 2009-2010, it was clear that Spurs were on the rise. They beat Arsenal for the first time in 11 years and finished 4th, qualifying to play Champions League football under Redknapp. The following season, they made it all the way to the quarter-finals of the Champions League, but here, things stalled a bit, and by the end of 2011-2012, Redknapp was gone. In came Portuguese Andre Villas-Boas to try and steady the affairs at the club, because now, Spurs were on the brink of transforming into a major force in English football once again. And even though Villas-Boas was in charge of some impressive displays at the club, overseeing the meteoric rise of Gareth Bale and Kyle Walker in particular, the inconsistencies in terms of results ultimately cost him his job. And by 2014, Spurs were on the lookout for another manager, and that's when they hired the guy that took them to the brink of world domination. Mauricio was performing wonders with an average Southampton team in the league, and his move to Spurs as head coach was the next big thing in his career and the club's history. In 2014-2015, his first full season, Pochettino led the Lily Whites to the final of the League Cup, losing to a Jose Mourinho-led Chelsea team, and now the impressive signs were back again that Spurs were on the rise. The following season was truly historic for Spurs. Pochettino transformed a lot of players at the club, with the likes of Harry Kane exploding onto the scene, the midfield genius of Christian Eriksen and Moussa Dembele, the cleverness and tactical ability of Dele Alli, the directness and goal threat of South Korean winger Seo Heung-min, a stable goalkeeper in Hugo Lloris, and the emergence of Eric Dyer. All of these players are the core of the team, and Spurs went on to an unprecedented push that saw them mount a title challenge with surprise outfit Leicester City for the league, losing out with 2 games to go. They ultimately finished 3rd, but at this point, the Premier League had taken a new shape, Spurs now making up what was known as the top 6, and if the previous season was good, the next was even better. This time employing a truly flexible 4-2-3-1 formation that saw the interchange of players and allowed for fluidity and creativity. Spurs went one step further to finish 2nd, finishing above Arsenal for the first time in the league since 1995. And just losing out on first place to a Chelsea team led by Antonio Conte. And even though things stalled a bit in 2018, Pochettino still had a lot of positives to talk about, because with the completion of the new stadium on the horizon, Spurs had to play their home games at the Wembley Stadium, but they still managed to finish an impressive 3rd in the league, behind the 2 Manchester clubs. At this point, Pochettino had earned the praises of the media and fans alike, with his man-management of players and a system that brought about creative attacking football. But the only flaw to all of this was that Spurs were yet to win anything under Pochettino. In fact, they hadn't won a major trophy since 2008, 11 years ago. But coming into the 2018-2019 season, they had the chance to put all of that behind them in the grandest stage of all. In the Champions League, Spurs embarked on a historic run. Finishing second in a group that contained European heavyweights FC Barcelona, they knocked out Borussia Dortmund in the round of 16 before facing Premier League giants Manchester City. No one gave them a chance. But with an impressive 1-0 win in the first Champions League match at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, followed by a 4-3 defeat at the Etihad which saw them progress on away goals, Spurs were in the semi-finals. Here, they took on an Ajax team that was on a giant killing spree, as they had knocked out record holders and defending champions Real Madrid before beating a Cristiano Ronaldo-led Juve team to reach the semis. Ajax won the first leg 1-0, and after taking a 2-0 lead at half-time, Spurs looked to be down and out. But in one of the greatest fairy tale comebacks in the history of the Champions League, a Lucas Moura hat-trick, with his last goal coming barely seconds left to play, was the difference as Spurs again won on away goals to reach the final of the Champions League. Now, they were 90 minutes away from erasing all the heartache and pain of the past. And this was the chance for Pochettino to cement his legacy as one of the greatest coaches in the club's history. But this final step proved to be one hurdle that was too big to cross, as with an injury-stricken Harry Kane leading the Spurs attack, they fell to a 2-0 defeat at the hands of Liverpool and ultimately lost out on the trophy. Another defeat. By the 2019-20 season, it seemed Spurs had reached their peak with Pochettino and was slowly beginning to decline. Perhaps the success of the previous season was too much on the players, as they failed to kick on from where they left off in previous times, and by mid-season, Pochettino was gone. In came the legendary Jose Mourinho to attempt a rebuild of the squad post-COVID, but even this task proved to be too big for the special one, as inconsistencies of the team and results cost him his job just days before the League Cup final in 2021. Ryan Mason, a former Spurs himself aged 28, now became the new man tasked with leading the team out to Wembley against Manchester City. But they failed to get past the Pep Guardiola team intent on dominating English football, losing the final 1-0, another chance at a trophy gone. Next in the dugout was Nuno Espirito Santo, and his appointment was truly similar to that of Pochettino, because having taken a Wolverhampton Wanderers team from the Championship to the Europa League in the space of 2 seasons, the Spurs fan had faith that he would lead them back to the same heights Pochettino had taken them to, and possibly even further. But these wishes only turned out to be mere dreams, as Nuno lasted only 4 months and was gone almost as soon as he came. With the appointment of Antonio Conte, a master tactician and proven at winning trophies and getting results, the glimmer of hope was back. But it ultimately proved to be the same thing, with his infamous outburst after the 3-3 draw at Southampton in 2022-23, where he claimed that the problem of the club was deeply rooted and beyond the laziness of the players on the pitch. Spurs sacked him, and have most recently appointed Ange Postecoglou from Celtic to try and attempt a rebuild, after finishing 8th under Conte and his assistant Christian Stellini last season. There it is, guys, the history of one of the most unique clubs in England to date. Spurs, who burst onto the scene without any major form of foreign investment and began tearing up the league in the latter part of the 90s, failed to truly kick on from where they left off. The damages created by Alan Sugar seem to never go away, as even years later, they still face the same issues to date, despite attempting a hire and fire strategy like most of the big clubs in the world game attempting to win trophies. Spurs have found this particular task almost difficult, going through managers like Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, and not winning anything does raise a lot of eyebrows. And with the two managers complaining about the same thing, the leadership at the board of affairs at the club and the mentality of the core of the team, it seems that the real problem at Spurs is Spurs. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and hit the subscribe button for more awesome content.